Howdy, of you delicious people. I'm here today to review Stanley's Lucky Man, Season 2, Episode 7. Thank you, everyone, for being a part of this review consistently, because I really do appreciate it. I know that this one is kind of like I'm doing every single episode and individually and whichever, compared to probably a whole entire, I'm just going to cover the whole entire season and then just be done with it or whatever. But anyways, so thank you for being a part of this episode or just in part of this in general. So I really do appreciate it. So, what does it technically happen in this episode? Well, we are to have some closure, a closure moment onto season 1 with this episode. We are to also have an interesting happening with Orwell in this episode, which that is to lead to us saying that Orwell is to either be dead, which could be a thing, or that Orwell is to eventually transfer and to leave forever, which could be a thing, or that Orwell could be in prison or something in this episode. Who knows? I do, because I watched the channel, or the video, episode, whatever. So, really we have some interesting things going on with Isabel. Isabel is to spend quite a bit of time with Eve in this episode, let's just say. Also, it seems that Anna is to be wanting to do some clickety-click things in her computer, let's just say that. That is to lead her to go and want to start asking questions. And here's the thing. Anna actually has one person that she could have gotten every single one of these answers from, but she just wants to not go to this one person who is to give her this answer. So Anna just goes on to just find someone else that could quite possibly give her the answer for these things. So, stupid her, but it is whatever. So, pushing on. So, throughout this case, this time around, there isn't exactly a gimmick killer in this episode, but it also seems like there is something more going on with this case than just like a person is getting murdered. It seems like there is some sloppy police work, let's just say, that is going on in this episode. So, hopefully I will get this, hopefully I will get some of this stuff all correct, but then again, reasonably, there's going to be, at some point, some stuff that's going to be coming, foggy to me, just because I'm like, what happened? What happened in this? I'm going to have to, retrace my steps, just because, this one, there's a lot of, things all going on with this episode, and so hopefully I'll get at least bits and pieces of here correct. So, in the end, let's go on to just say that I think I've covered... Harry and Winter. Man, are their relationship just like a roller coaster ride. We have it to where both Harry and Winter... man, if this doesn't feel like some kind of, couple relationship, good God. We just have, Harry and Winter just, holding hands, tra-la-la-la-la, through the park in some episodes, but then also others, Winter is, checking up on Harry, just hey, man, eat your fruits and vegetables kind of thing. And then, in, this episode, Winter is, telling Harry in one way or another, I thought you loved me, and Harry's but I do, and Winter's no, I don't think you do. We're having, a couple spat in this episode, where Winter is thinking that Harry is not trusting him, and so on and so forth. It's, this weird, between these two guys, it's just a really fun, thing to see these characters interacting with one another every single episode. It's really enjoyable. I like it. So, but yeah, I think that covers up to the 5 minutes of which that I would normally talk about this. So, yeah, so let's get into this episode. Let's go into that double five time territory. I think I covered, like, Isabel has some interesting things going on in here. I think I said that. Uh, uh, yeah, I think I covered a bulk of everything. So, let's go on to spoiler time. Spoiler time. It's about that time to spoil, this episode. Let's go on here. So, very beginning, we have Harry, who is to try to get some food off of some vendor off the street somewhere, and maybe get a hot dog. Maybe it's a falafel. Maybe it's any number of things. I don't know because I don't remember what he had bought. So Harry is to witness a crime, I think a burglar of sorts. And so Harry is to chase after this guy. And that is to lead Harry to bump into Isabella again. And so both Harry and Isabella are kind of talking about like what had happened at the very last episode. That it seems like Harry and Isabella's like relationship is kind of on the rocks now, just because Isabella pointing a gun at Harry's head in the last episode, and that basically like Isabella is to really just see that like Harry and her are basically going to just break up at this point. And so Isabella is to basically just go into a just kind of rage at this episode just because of the fact that this bracelet is to really just have her lose everything. And so eventually she's going to go after the source of that agony, and so we'll get there. So eventually we have Harry, who is to transition into Case, and so they are to find out that this guy is who is dead in this episode is to be a guy called Dean Adams. And so that leads us to kind of look around this place to find that there is a long strand of hair that is to be evidently from a woman's, and that it seems that a guy named Sam Browning, I guess, had also like lived in this spot, and so eventually they're going to try and track down Sam Browning at some part of this episode, and eventually find out if Sam had killed Dean. So also, Harry is to eventually find that there is a poker chip in some part of this room, coincidentally, that is to lead to the Green Dragon Casino, which is to also lead to Lily Ann, which a lot of people will know from previous season, where the last time that I think we had seen Lily Ann had been putting a gun to Kaleem, and Kaleem had said to Lily Ann, it's like, well, what do you want me to tell your father? And Lily Ann just shoots her gun in the air, and so Camille, like, runs off, and, like, Lily Ann doesn't shoot Camille. That was the last time I think we saw her, but I could be wrong. Maybe she was in episode whatever of whatever, but, anyways. So, Harry is to, of course, go and meet up with Lily Ann, and so Lily Ann is just like, well, hey, like, you gambling again, Harry? And Harry's like, no, that's not what I'm here for. I'm here to arrest you, because I have evidence to think that you had murdered somebody. So Lily Ann is getting booked and then getting interrogated, and so Lily Ann is to mention that like she doesn't want to really just talk with Harry or Surrey or whoever. Like she wants to actually go and talk to anybody else but them, because I guess technically she does have friends in this precinct. And so Harry's like, that's interesting. So like that's the big thing to like take from here. And so all of a sudden Harry is to pull out or Winter is to pull out Harry, because it's like, yeah, like I need you to come with me because I think we're gonna have to clear Lily Ann of all charges. And Harry's like, why? Like I have her here, long hair and whatever. And Winter is like, well, that's the problem. Like the hair has gone missing. And Harry's like, mother, like you also eventually find a knife in this crime scene also, and evidently the knife had been wiped clean. So, uh, so that leads to Harry just kind of just releasing Lily Ann and eventually going into Winter's office and just be like, okay, so, like, how is it that this hair had gone missing? And Winter's like, I don't know, maybe, like, somebody in the evidence department had gotten sloppy or whichever. Like, somebody had misplaced this. Maybe we do have a mole within us. Like, maybe somebody's getting paid off. And Harry's like, well, Lillian said that there was somebody working with her in this department, so yeah, there must be a mole. So Orwell comes in to go on to mention uh, Adam's kind of history of him like living in this apartment and so on and so forth, and just his back history. And so Winter is to immediately ask Orwell what was his alibi for this day. And Orwell is like, well, yeah, I went drinking with some friends of mine, and actually that wasn't the truth. Orwell had went to go and seek out another job offer at some security place. Coincidentally, Orwell went to look for another job, but eventually Orwell will go back to try to find out more information about this job, and all of a sudden the job will no longer exist. Bizarrely. Kind of saying that Orwell is going to be kind of tied to this thing, or to be led to be some like culprit of to just be like cuffed for this, or like tied to this because he has no technical alibi. And they're kind of really pushing the fact that Orwell is pretty much going to be like tied to this. So, anyways, so Harry is to go off to talk to Eve, and for the life of me, I cannot actually remember what the actual whole conversation was, besides Harry going and talking to Eve about things. And like I'm trying to like I think like the conversation kind of went into like Harry talking about like Isabel for the umpteenth time. I'm naturally assuming, and like I think like I don't know, like I don't remember exactly what that conversation entailed, but let's move on. So Orwell is to go into that spot where it's to be the missing room, and there had been a person cleaning out that room, and so Orwell is like, hey, like, where were these people? Like, where did they move to? Where did they shift to? And this woman said that there hadn't been a person working in this room for a number of months. And Orwell's like, oh my god, like, so Orwell is to have said that there had been two guys here named Adam Phillips and Tom Lynch. And so, like, yeah, like, I guess, like, those guys were to quite possibly be the murderers or any number of things in this episode. But, anyways, pushing on. So, Eve is to eventually go off and is to be kind of waiting for these guys to like move these like construction things, and we have this one guy who is to kind of like latch this these like beams that are to be on the back of this truck, and I guess this little rope thing is kind of flimsy, and so Eve gets knocked out, like kind of just pushed over with her motorcycle, and that leads to have Isabel taking Eve and just like drowning her and beating the crap out of her, just because Isabel is just so upset that Isabel feels that Eve, like putting this bracelet on her, had caused Isabella to lose everything. And so now, like, Isabella's just going to take this out on Eve, basically. So, uh, Anna is to go on to consistently keep watching Like Daisy, the video of Harry where Harry's to walk through the street and supposedly get almost close to being ran over. And so Isabel is just like, you know what? I'm going to go to Isabella and ask her information about this bracelet and about Harry. So Anna is to go off to talk to Isabella and like talk about that Anna also knows information about Isabella, that Isabella was at Guadalajara at some point, and like now she's like here. Like, what does this all kind of mean? And so, plus also, Anna is to want to know more information about this bracelet, and it seems like even though she could get answers from Harry, that's not good enough. She has to go to another person and get answers. And so Isabella's like, well, yeah, I'll give you answers. Like, I'll definitely give you answers. So what Isabella ends up doing is she ends up grabbing a gun and placing it down. And so Isabella is all of a sudden starting to play Russian roulette with herself. Isabella is putting bullets into this gun and then shooting her, like shooting her own head, like firing upon her head. And so she's miss. She's putting more bullets into the gun. She's putting every single bullet into the gun. And every single time, this gun is to not shoot Isabella. To just kind of showcase that, like, Isabella is lucky. And, like, to prove in the most harshest terms to Anna to help her understand, like, that that luck is on either her or Harry's side, and that eventually that will lead to Harry probably losing everyone in the process. So Anna, who is now just kind of frightened about seeing Isabel do this whole thing, Anna just runs off because she's like, this girl is a loon. She has lost her freaking mind. Is that what Harry's gonna end up like being? Like, man, maybe I don't want him with my daughter for anymore because maybe he's gonna lose his freaking mind. So, anyways, back with Isabella and Eve. Isabella's just gonna like drown Eve some more and just have a good time. Like, hey, I'm gonna drown you. Hope you like it. Nah, maybe not. So, anyways, so what ends up happening is it seems that Orwell was to quite possibly go into the evidence room at a specific time. And so a lot of people are thinking already that this is going to be Orwell who is going to be pinned to this thing, because supposedly he doesn't have an alibi that seems all that concrete, and so they're going after Orwell. So Harry and Surrey are to eventually find Orwell and confront him about, like, hey man, like, it seems that Winter is like almost wanting to pin you on this whole thing, like, where were you? And so Orwell explains all this, that he was looking for another job, but all of a sudden, like, this job all of a sudden got ghosted. And so Orwell is like, I didn't do this, like, believe me, Harry. Like, I get that it seems like I'm a shady person and that, like, we have had our differences and whatever, but, like, I didn't do this. And Harry's like, I believe you. Like, I believe you, Orwell. Because I want you to stay on this show, Orwell. Anybody else would just like, Orwell did it, but not Harry. Because, like, at least, like, Harry is just like, you know what, like, I'm going to trust that Orwell did not do this. Because, like, he just, like, that look in his eyes, that scheme in his smile, or whatever. Anyways, so, Harry and Suri are to go on to Winter, and so Winter is just like, hey, like, you guys, like, I think you found Orwell, and like, you weren't gonna just bring him in. And Harry's like, because I know Orwell didn't do this. And Winter is like, you guys found Orwell and you didn't come to me with this information? And, like, Winter is like, you know what? Like, I thought you and me, like, Harry, had a good rapport with one another. Like, why is it that you don't trust me? Like, if anything, like, Orwell could have come to us and, like, I would have probably believed him also. And I would have just been like, yeah, like, let's go and frickin' figure out who else this is. And so Winter is just like, Harry, like, I'm just kind of like really upset that you don't trust me enough. Like, if anything, like, Winter has proven to Harry numerous times, especially towards the tail end of season one, that it's like, hey man, like, I'm gonna trust Harry. And so now, like, Winter is like, hey man, I trusted you. Where's that back trust? Like, come on. So Suri is to give Harry a list of everyone who was to be at that crime scene who wasn't Orwell. And so, really, Harry is to think, like, well, everybody is on this list, but there is also some, like, certain people that aren't actually on this list. And one of them is to be, like, the crime scene manager. Like, how, like, I guess you can just rule him out immediately. So Harry goes to the evidence room to talk with the crime scene manager that I think, like, I heard his name differently, like, through this episode. Like, I at first heard Alan, but then I think his name was Ed. So it's either Alan or Ed. Like, I'm just going to call him crime scene manager because I don't know what freaking name it was. I think his name was Ed. Like, because I kept hearing, like, different things and whatever. But anyways, so eventually, Harry is to talk to the crime scene manager, and eventually he is to come clean that he had his daughter that had been a gambler, and his daughter had a very huge high bill of debt from Lily Ann's casino, and so that pushed the crime scene manager to need to then, like, square up this debt. But eventually that just landed this guy to eventually get, I think, blackmailed over and over and over again to do all kinds of things for Lily Ann and her people. So it just forced him to just become like a person working for them forcibly. So so that pushes on to Harry just saying, like, well, okay then, like, so here's what we're gonna do. We're gonna have this guy be the small fish to get the bigger fish, which is Lily Ann. So we're gonna try to have the crime scene manager be wearing a wire and go to Lily Ann and just kind of like tried her to get her to spill the beans, confess about something. And so let me pause here for a second. All right. So what ends up happening is that they go in there, and so the crime scene manager is to tell Lily Ann that, hey, like, this is all resolved. If anything, yeah, everything is taken care of. And so Lily Ann is just like, why are you here? Like, why are you here asking me these questions? And so Lily Ann is to eventually start, like, sniffing out this crime scene manager. And so eventually she is to, like, tear his shirt to see that there's a wire there. And so she's like, aha. And so they supposedly get rid of the wire. And so eventually Lily Ann is to spill the beans anyways. But here's the thing. They had a different wire than this just one little thing. And so, like, there was another wire that was on this phone. or there was like basically like the phone was the actual wire. Anyways, so and so what ends up happening is that Orwell comes in and arrests Lillian because it's like, yeah, like Orwell has to be the guy that arrests Lillian because Orwell was almost being put into jail for this whole debacle. And so Orwell got his last like comeuppance and whatever. So that leads to really just have Surrey talking to Orwell and mention like, hey man, like if anything, like you should stay here. Like if none of these other jobs are going to work out, you should just stay. Like transferring is going to be a waste of time. You're just going to want to come back here, and like no one else is probably going to treat you as good as we will, kind of thing. And so Orwell is just like, you know what, fine. Like I guess I'll stay, and because Orwell lately has made some mistakes, but eventually also like there's a lot more trust in these people with Orwell than whatever. So, because really, like Orwell, like why would he have done what he had done in this episode when really he was going to transfer out? Like it kind of just seems kind of weird that Orwell would do this like shady thing uh, when really he was on his way out of this department. It seems kind of weird. And so, like, that was the whole reason why Harry trusted Orwell through this episode. So, reasonably, that just lends us to eventually having both Harry and Rich, like, just kind of talking it out at the tail end of this episode. And like so I think that's like a bulk of what just happens throughout this episode is just like Lillian gets arrested and Harry and Rich have a moment at the end of this. Again, like there's some like dialogue stuff where I don't exactly all remember. I remember how like things are to go, but I like there's some stuff that I can't put everything together. Especially for this one because there's just uh, a lot to digest and a lot to go on. But with that said, I'm going to get the heck out of here. Goodbye, everybody. Bye, everybody.